Hi, I'm Mark Jacksina, and welcome to Order Fire's North Carolina Craft Beer Month episode. For this show, Peter, Darius, Joel, and myself traveled the entire length of the state, and out of the hundreds of awesome breweries that we have here in North Carolina, we sat down with 4 that we think best represent what's going on here in our state, as well as the craft beer scene itself. We sat down with the guy that many would call the hand on the handle, that pulled the tap open, that got all this stuff brewing. Sat down with 2 brothers whose unwavering vision and desire for craft took their brewery long enough to open that it became a thing of urban legend. We also sat down with 3 friends who came cross country to open up a brewery and craft flavors that are anything but dead, and finally sat down with the guy that did things with beets and beers that even Pete loves. You would think that with all these breweries, the competition would be fierce. Instead, what we found was a sense of admiration, cooperation, and community. They say that Virginia is for lovers. I'd reach out and say that North Carolina is full of friends. Enjoy the show. That's it. Not doing it no more. Welcome to Order Fire. This is a special edition for North Carolina Craft Beer Month. We're sitting here today in Charlotte talking to Jason and Jeff Alexander of Free Range Brewing. I'd like to talk to them a little bit about sort of what got them here, which I think is a great story. Talk a little bit about where they see beer going, not just in Charlotte, but the state in general, and get their take on live music as well. Gentlemen, thanks for meeting me down here this Sunday morning. Let's talk a little bit about your backstory and the fact that you guys you weren't going to put a lesser product out. That you guys had a vision and stuck to it all the way to the end. Like, how long did it actually take you guys? Because it's like a urban myth.
Yeah, a long time. About 6 years from when we decided, okay, this is what we want to do. This is a rough concept of it, and this is where we want it to be, when we open. Mm-hmm. We did a whole lot of learning to do, learning of brewing, learning business, and then all the other pieces involved, learning how to, do plumbing, electrical work. Right. Because there was a little bit of all that involved in trying to get this place open. So,
which obviously the space looks great.
Thank you.
You guys managed to maintain your brotherhood all the way through?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we worked out the kinks of our brotherhood a long time ago.
This not just you two were involved in this family-wise, am I right?
Correct.
So you had...
We rubbed in anyone we could.
You corrupted everyone you could?
We did, yeah. The big players, I guess, were our wives, Sarah and Brittany. And then beyond that, we really drew a lot from our parents and then Sarah's parents. Sarah's parents being the ones that really helped pull together a lot of pieces here. So Bob and Peggy, anything you see in here that's beautiful, you can count on that Bob had his hands all over it. So yeah, we leaned really hard on folks, and there was a whole lot of stress and heartache through the process, but I think really beautiful stuff came from it.
Yeah, this whole place has been set up as really family oriented, and without us being very family oriented, that would not carry through. That same message would not be here for us to deliver to everyone else and bring people in here without understanding, without us being really integrated in it as well.
It's kind of the foundation of the space, the way we did the space, the reason we did the space, the way we want to interact with our community, and then the way we brew. So it definitely has roots through everything.
I mean, I honestly can tell you that like the beers that are being brewed in North Carolina are on point with being my most favorite beers ever. What's going on here in North Carolina feels right to me. Like, the land is good, the energy is good. And I think that it comes through in the products, whether it's Jamie Swafford and what he brings off of his farm, what you guys are doing here, Full Steam Brewery. Like, you guys are all working within a network of farmers, a network of purveyors. So I guess my question is what is it, or what do you think it is about using those products specifically that makes your beer stand out, or makes your product stand out?
Well, just by working with somebody that's talented, complements what we bring to the table. Mm-hmm. It also gives us access to a whole different set of logic and creative ideas. So we'll reach out to Jamie and say, Jamie, what's coming in season? What do you want to grow different? What are the stuff you're excited about? And then he'll say, I don't know. And then I'll get a random text or call, what do you think about this? And that'll spark something on our end of, well, what does it taste like? Is it tart? Is it rich? Is it earthy? Is it bright? Is it citrusy? So whatever that ingredient is, the last one that I think was, one of these like crazy ideas was a hibiscus flower called a roselle that looks like an okra before it opens, and it's kind of the color of the red rhubarb color, and it's really fleshy, super tart. Really nice floral aromatics, and it's got that kind of little bit of kind of sweetness that you can get from rhubarb when you complement it with other stuff. And so, he just kind of brought one of those in one time. He's like, here, taste this. And so we tasted it, and we're like, yeah, bring me as many as you can bring us. So it's that just openness to being able to work with anything, and to him just randomly thinking of us when he has ideas, and us knowing that we can trust that, Jamie's going to bring us a high quality product, and he's more than just dropping it off at the door.
Right.
He's interested in what we're doing with it, how we're doing it, and what we can do more after we do something. So, how do we make this better next time? So,
do you go with him? Do you go to him with specific requests at times?
Totally.
Like I want to do something with blah blah blah.
Yep.
What do you think the strangest thing is that you asked him for and he actually had or was able to find?
It's hard to answer that. I mean, the most common thing that what comes to mind when you say that is juniper recently, and it wasn't so much we need this. We need a bittering, something. And this is in the fall, and this is when we started really getting heavy into making gruits. And we said, Jamie, we need something that's got some pininess to it, that's got some oil, kind of resininess to it, and is also kind of bright. And he's like, well, let's try juniper berries. And then so for the next, 4 or 5 months, Jamie's regularly dropping off juniper here, and we're just kind of stockpiling it and then using it all these different ways in beer. And so, yeah, he's not only a provider, but a liaison and a confidant in, I need this, here's what I'm thinking, and then if he can't get it, he'll help us find it or help us work through a substitute. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Is there a specific style of beer that you're more drawn to, or like is there one specific one that's like a go-to style or go-to beer? Are you really just sort of like, we're doing this today, we're doing that today?
For me personally, not so much a particular style, but focusing on beers that we can work with people like Jamie and work with seasonal ingredients and things, and the beers that will allow us to use those ingredients more. Saisons, gruits, things that really kind of push out fun flavors, and that you can kind of make the beer just be the canvas to work everything else into from there.
So, Jason, with you being a brewer, is there a particular style that you're more akin to, something that is more of a favorite to brew?
I like all kinds of beer, and I always like trying to brew something new, which there's tons of those since it's such a fresh thing to me. But a saison is a big draw, especially low alcohol beers. I love something that you can drink that is super light on the alcohol but still big flavor. And then hoppy beers, and finding ways to use hops in ways that are not so common, being that IPAs are the most popular style of beer these days. So,
how long? All right, so that's been going on for a little while, the IPA thing. Do you think that's going to be something that eventually people are going to get sick of, as far as just like drinking something because it's a hop bomb?
I don't know. I think that because of the way that folks are innovating with hops, as far as the hop products available, the hops available, and then the way brewers are using them in ways that accentuate more of these awesome flavors that come through hops and these big, huge smells, and less bitterness. The bitterness, I think, is what turns anybody off of an IPA that doesn't, I don't like IPAs. Well, you probably just had an IPA that was too bitter for you.
Some of the IPAs that I've had of more recent tends to be a bit more nuanced. Do you think, like, once we got to that point where it was just like, okay, everybody wants a lot of hops, do you think that now you're starting to see a progression where it's maturing as a style?
Totally. You've got this wide range of style, just like you do with most beer styles. You can do an English style IPA that's nice and malty and subtle on the hops. You can do your old school West Coast style IPA that's the big pine bitter bomb. You can do your new school East Coast IPA that's just this straight, smooth with this blast of juice at the end, and then a nose that's dank and really bold and passion fruit and citrus. Finding A, the type of beer that you like to make, and B, the one that you can support by being able to continue to get the hops you want for it. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges with brewing, hoppy beers is, can I get these hops? They're crazy expensive. To get those attributes, you got to use them in huge amounts. And so how do I make that sustainable? For us as a tiny brewery, it was a lot of the reason why we chose this size is that, we want to experiment. So we know that we're not taking a huge risk when we do experiment. And then the downside to that is that we can't enter into these large hop contracts to lock in that stability of, yes, I will have this hop for 5 years, and it grows in increments each year. So now, we'll run low on hops, and I'll start calling our brewer friends. What do you have extra of? What do you mind, selling me a box of? That box is going to cost me $800, and it's going to last a couple months. But we'll experiment with it, and when we're through it, we're done, and then we'll try something different. Which is why we are totally okay with not having any regular beers. Or consistent, beers that are always offered.
When you say regular beers, you mean things that you have on tap all the time?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Beer. We've got our cream ale, which is the one beer we try to, never will call it a flagship because that just is silly, but it's a beer that we love. It's an easy drinking, no thinking kind of beer, and so by wanting to offer, weird and crazy beers, we think we also have a responsibility to offer kind of that beer that, it's not that if somebody comes in and they're, die hard, shit beer fan,
right?
Then we have something for them, and it's not something that's going to totally confuse them or totally challenge them beyond their means, but it's also something that's going to introduce and say, hey, there's a little bit more flavor here than what you're used to. There's a reason why there's more flavor there, and here's why. And if you like this, you probably also like this and this and this.
What makes a cream ale a cream ale?
So you want a beer that's light and easy drinking. We want ours to be crisp, refreshing, with a little hint of kind of cereal sweetness to it, but not that stands out. That's kind of just like a little after finish that, oh, that's not a dry beer. It's not a hoppy beer. There's a little bit of body to it because of that.
But you're drinking
A grisette,
which is
it's called Susie I Am Not, named after our grandma Susie, who's been a big inspiration for life and a lot of beers for us. She's slowly shrinking as she gets older and kind of finding her final years in life. A grisette is not dissimilar from a small saison, 3.5% alcohol, and really refreshing, a little tart, big yeast character from it, and to me,
You told me earlier, I've been correct, that you said this was a working man's beer?
Correct.
Or is that something you came up with, or is that really what they use?
This is old school stuff. So a saison was traditionally a working man's beer for farmhands. So while a saison can, many interpretations these days, but kind of one of the textbook descriptions is a saison is your farmhand's beer. It can have a mixed fermentation, meaning other cultures in with your brewer's yeast. The grisette specifies more wheat content, which there's a lot of overlap between the two, but a clean fermentation. So the tartness comes just from brewer's yeast, not from using any bacteria. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Now there was another part that you said that they would also give this to children because it was low.
Well, I didn't say that, but I agree with that.
I thought you did say that we were talking about it before we actually got rolling here. Something about dirty water.
Oh, so that was the whole thing with any beer that's considered a working man's beer, is that they were usually there because there was not potable water. Fermentation produces a safe to drink beverage.
Safe to drink beverage, kids.
Yep.
Right there. So I see some barrels back behind us. Is there a story to those?
Yeah, these are going to be.
Can we talk about those barrels?
Mm-hmm, yeah, these are going to be a really fun new project. So our collaborations with coffee and Pure Intentions Coffee are some of our most exciting stuff that we've done with beer because Matt's open to anything, and he's open and he works really hard to help us, come up with these new ideas and then meet the needs and goals of trying to make them work. So these are freshly dumped rum barrels from Muddy River Distillery in Belmont. Mm-hmm. Super boozy, delicious rum. And then the idea is that Matt's going to put cold brew coffee in there, and then we're going to do a new version of Bob's. Rather than making our brown ale and aging it on coffee, we're going to make our brown ale, and then after this has had cold brew coffee in it, we're going to put it in there. So we're looking for a layer of oak from the wood, a layer of rum, and then a layer of the cold brew coffee in there. And then we'll take that out of there and then age it on cold brew coffee to give us the aromatics back. So hopefully we'll get some new layers to Bob's that we've not had before.
So it's going to be sort of like double coffeeed, if you will.
Kind of, yeah.
You'll kind of introduce the idea of coffee in the barrels, and then you'll introduce the coffee.
But hopefully really smooth and big smell, and with that little hint of rum in there. So.
We're in North Carolina Craft Beer Month right now, and that leads me to sort of my next question. This is something that I'd like to get everybody that get a chance that I've spoken with. I'm asking, how do you see yourself as part of the picture of what's going on in North Carolina craft beer now? I know it's a big question, but
I think we like to see that we're starting off on the lowest common denominator, lowest level of how are we relevant to our community. Why are we here? You know, I live down the street. You know, I'm offering these things to my neighbors. It's our friends that come here. It's people that we want to be our friends that come here. So we're trying to find ways to make this little part of our community stronger and healthier. And, you know, we're asking folks to support us through drinking our beer, and then what do we do to give back to them? Whether it's, you know, sharing art through our, you know, rotating gallery shows, or it's our beer, or it's a music, a band that we have coming in that, you know, we don't want to charge people money for because we're excited enough to see it, and we want to make it so that we can afford for it to be, you know, open to anyone. Or whether it's the pig that, you know, folks are going to come eat here, that we're going to say, eat this, it's awesome. Help us support this other thing that's important to us, that's part of our community, that's part of why we're able to make beer like this. So we don't have that far to go to get to our like max size of what we have in our kind of end game, I guess, or what our dream is. We like it small. We like to be able to connect with folks and still be face to face. And the way we brew really fits that, being able to change up stuff all the time.
So, I mean, the reality of like the hospitality service industry, food, whatever, you know, we have to deal with social media, right? You guys have a good campaign on social media, I think, as far as like you're very active on Instagram, post a picture, and move on with today, right? It's become very visual. And what you guys do is part of, I mean, it fits with the brand. The other element, of course, of social media is that everybody's a critic. Do you guys have a favorite? Is there one that really stands out? I mean, and it could be a compliment, it could be, you know, the negative one, but is there one that really stands out that you love?
Yeah, there are a lot of favorites. Some are really good, some are really bad, and you look at them, you have to walk away for a few minutes before you figure out how you want to address them. One that kind of holds to the beers that we're drinking right now is someone pointed out that when you drink in here, you feel like you're drinking in your grandma's kitchen, and for them that wasn't a negative manner the way that was said.
They meant that in a negative manner?
Yeah.
Wow, I can't think of a better place to sit down and have a beer.
For me, having a beer named after that particular, you know, grandma that we would relate that comment to in a sense. We spent a lot of time drinking beer in her kitchen. She was where we went to school to. We were at East Carolina, and she was down there, so we drank many beers in that kitchen. So it was like, I get that, yeah. I'll agree there, and I'm actually okay with that comment,
right?
So I'm not even going to answer it.
That's so funny that they absolutely got it and totally missed the point at the same time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out of your leisure day, if you will, before all this stuff comes in, live music and food trucks. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys sitting down, you know, let me listen to what you guys got to say about stuff. Thank you so much for the beers.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And cut.
Hey, welcome to Order Fire. Today we're at Burial Beer Co. here in Asheville, North Carolina. Sitting down with Jess and Tim. We're going to talk about what it takes to build a small brewery into something that's extremely special and burgeoning here in the craft beer capital of North Carolina. Guys, thanks for having us here today. Really appreciate it. Tim, good to see you. Jess,
thanks for
absolute
coming, man.
pleasure. Well, listen, I want to talk to you guys about, you know, there's so much stuff I want to talk about with you. So first off, I guess first and foremost, so it's Burial Beer Co. And the name is something that is special. In
Very.
which way? Well, I know they're all special.
So Burial Beer Co., the name, kind of the not fun, exciting answer is that it did come up in a brainstorming session years ago, right when we decided that we wanted to open a brewery. We were living in Seattle. We were like, wow, that's really catchy, we love it, but it needs to be more than that for us. It needs to be something that inspires us, that relates back to our core values, to the mission behind what beers we brew. So burial to us means a couple different things. One is it's about the cyclical nature of life. brewing is also a cyclical process, as is farming and harvest. And then furthermore, Doug, our third owner, used to live in New Orleans, the two of us, and we noticed in New Orleans they have jazz funerals, right? So they're celebrating life, they're not mourning death, and that was something that continues to inspire us, where burial is more about the celebration of life, not the death morbidity. But we certainly play on both of those kind of themes within our branding.
Right.
Yes. Doug and I met Tim in Seattle. Yep. So it was about 9 years ago.
So is it like an adopted son thing? Did you just couch surf? Where did you guys meet? How did this all come about?
Well, I was actually working with and good friends with one of Tim's friends, and that's how we met Tim, and it was kind of a bonding at first meet over beer. Tim was already into craft beer. Doug and I were still drinking some of the macro brands, and I just remember a lot of wine. And I just remember Tim at his house discussing sour beer with me, and wild fermentation and the history of Belgium and where that style originated, and just that really striking me as, oh wow, there's something behind all of this craft beer. There's history, there's science, there's more behind the glass.
That's a really good way to put it. I think that might be my most favorite answer that I've heard on why you're brewing beer and why you came about.
Yeah, I mean, something that was cool when I first met Doug and Jess, I found them immediately to be very passionate people, so I started to talk to them about who I was and what I was into, and I was just really into craft beer, more so on the consumer side, I had done some home brewing before that, but I was never really into it. And so when I started to explain it to them, and they seemed really interested, and I could kind of see their passion building, I was like, okay, these are going to be good friends of mine. Okay, if we're going to homebrew, let's make the best homebrew we could possibly make. Right. So let's get right into all grain brewing, and let's start learning and reading and doing everything we can. And so it was kind of a great perfect storm there, where it was we're brewing a lot and we're realizing the values and the just the beauty of the beer scene, the craft beer scene, and we just fell in love with it. And that was when we were like, yeah, this needs to be our thing. We need to be a part of this. We need to take this to the next level.
Kind of sounds like a Yola Tango of beer. I don't know if you're familiar with that band, but it was like beer. They were music critics, really. And then nobody's really putting out the music that I want to hear, so they formed their band basically. Yeah. So jump forward. So then you guys ended up choosing North Carolina to put. When you decided to finally you're like, we're going to do this.
Yeah. So again, we were living in Seattle. Doug and I had our first child a year before we moved. I would say we decided to open the brewery probably 2+ years before we actually made the move. And then it was probably a year into that planning that we decided on Asheville. We had to obviously change our lives a little bit, sell a condo, that takes time, those kind of things. So I would say it was a year before we moved, we were like, okay, Asheville's our place. We knew we wanted to get back east, just everybody being pretty far from their roots. Seattle, of course, has an amazing craft beer scene. As you know, it's a major metropolitan city, so that was something that, although we loved living there, as far as owning a small business and really feeling like we could make an impact both in the craft beer scene and also just, again, as a small business, part of a community, that was really important to us, to get to a city that still had all the urban offerings of art, culture, music, drink, food, but something that was more manageable in size, where, again, we could really connect with the people of the community. So that was Asheville.
Yeah,
and the beautiful outdoors, of course.
Talking about community, and I find that everybody that I've spoken to, from chefs to other brewers to other brewery owners, that's been a consistent undertone.
Yeah, and to speak to what you're saying about just community, I mean, in Seattle, there's obviously an amazing beer scene going on, a lot of breweries in a small area.
Right.
But it always felt like it was very competitive there. Everyone's kind of just fighting for a tap handle in a bar. They're not really working together. They're not collaborating. I mean, it may have changed since we left, but I
It's
never
only 3
knew
years
of,
ago, though.
I never knew of 2 breweries in Seattle that collaborated.
That's
together.
true. I never really thought about that.
And everybody here collaborates.
And
which I
here,
love.
yeah,
We
every-
collaborated like almost every single brewery.
I mean, there's more breweries per capita here, but it has a completely different feel. It does not feel like it's brewery against brewery, you know? I mean, we're all kind of helping each other. We're all friends.
Yeah.
For example, if I realize I forgot to order some grain that I need, like I can walk around and ask everyone, and I'll find it, and they'll be happy to give it to me.
I want to talk to you a little bit about, so you've got some community gardens outside this space. Can you tell me a little about what you got planned for those?
Sure. So we expanded at this location last year. We have twice as many raised beds just because we, kind of were ahead of the game for once. So what we're planning in May is to invite the community and our staff members to come and help us plant. So it'll still be a burial garden, but it's, again, bringing the community together, having brunch afterwards on the Sundays. So, we always have brunch. And, having people come back, they're drinking a Keeper's Vale Honey Saison, they're looking at the rose bushes that they planted and they're flourishing, and they know that those roses will go into a future batch of Keeper's Vale Honey Saison. And just, again, that cyclical nature of both the craft brewing industry and of farming and just community is something that...
Letting people just have a stake in what we do. I helped in some way, and now I get to drink it,
Right.
I think that's very rewarding, or at least we hope it to be.
Yeah. Keeper's Vale. So this is brewed with hibiscus, chamomile, rose hips, rose petals, elderflower, passion flower, heather, and a touch of lavender.
Wow, that's impressive. Keeper's Vale Honey Saison, it's a beer that we've just become really passionate about. It has a really cool backstory to it, I think. We think it's a very unique beer, and it does stand out in a way in the market. So essentially the kind of the story behind it was I had this idea to make a beer that was kind of inspired loosely by the honeybee. So kind of one of those, in a way, like a hot topic where
People love bees in Asheville.
and we all kind of know about how they have a little bit of a declining population, and they're so important to the farming industry and pollinating things.
Living.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of living,
breathing.
you might like the bees.
Right. So I wanted to make a beer that was kind of inspired by that. So it was going to be a saison at its base, and I felt that was a good base. We put North Carolina wildflower honey in it. Actually, quite a large percentage. So the honey flavor is going to come through, and then that was the beer. It was a honey saison. But then what we would do in secondary post fermentation, we'd split the batch, and we'd add essentially teas or tinctures of the herbs that Jess mentioned.
But singular, so you could
But,
really
yeah.
see like what heather does versus hibiscus, and really be able to tell what those adjuncts flavor.
It's kind of like a single hop beer, if you're familiar with that. So you just
Single flower beer.
allows you to get the true essence of that element.
That's a really sophisticated beer, and I don't mean that by any stretch, any way to make it sound like it's anything other than fantastic. I can honestly say I don't think that I've ever had a beer strike me in such a way on my palate. So great job on that. I mean, this is
Thanks.
super good.
Thanks.
Yeah, and that's where a beer like that speaks both to where we came from in the beginning as a nano brewery that allowed us to do things like what Tim spoke about, the experimental flights, and Tim, Doug, and I really getting direct feedback from people, and that evolving as we've grown. And now you have Keeper's Vale, and now it's going to go into cans, and it's going to be a bigger part of production. So that beer both is about how we like to approach beer, but also about the story from when we started as a nano brewery to where we are and where we're going. So
And
it's definitely
hopefully
a special
that
one.
story will become even more important as we're growing the flowers right here on our property, and our community is part of it. I think if you're trying to boil down like our approach to beer, it's really just trying to really balance like extreme creativity standing out in a saturated market, but then executing it really, really well. And that's really hard to do both at once. It's so hard to make a beer with cucumbers and turmeric and like make it be good. Like when you drink it, like, man,
Are you
yeah, I
making that
taste
now?
those things.
Are you making one of
but
those now?
I
'Cause that
also
sounds good.
want
Yeah, it's
more
in
of it.
bottle conditioning with wild yeast right now. They just bottled it
Because
this
that sounds
week.
amazing.
It's something
Yep.
that I sometimes I try to explain to some of our patrons when they come in, and maybe they see a couple gaps on the board and that we have a couple guest taps, and it's like, well, I tried to make this beer with saffron and it just didn't work out, and I don't want to put that on tap.
So you found that you just weren't wild about saffron.
Yeah, so
Or it takes like
A pinch.
a pinch of saffron.
yeah, so I had to dump it down the drain, and I can only produce so much with what I have. So sometimes those dump jobs mean there's a hole in the lineup, and not everyone really gets that, especially when you can go around town and you see a lot of options.
Right.
So it's kind of like if you don't step up the bat, you're not going to hit the home run. So that's really a challenge to like, okay, let's try this wacky thing, and like, man, if it doesn't work, we're gonna put ourselves in a bad place. So that's tough. And as we expand, then we take a 1-barrel batch and we bump it to a 10-barrel batch, or a 10-barrel batch to a 60-barrel batch that we'll be doing hopefully by the summer. That execution and that we've got to get it right away.
When you were planning,
Yeah.
when you were planning this out, like we're gonna get together, we're gonna open up a brewery. Did you discuss the possibility of like having to throw out 30-gallon batches of beer?
I think that
The
we're
reason I'm asking is because there's home brewers out there right now that are thinking about opening up a brewery. It's not that easy or cheap.
Facts.
Yeah, I think that we were definitely aware that this was a thing that was just a part of having a brewery. I think beer drinkers are starting to get that more. I mean, it's an integrity thing, and I think that they recognize
brands, yeah.
that. I mean, more and more, I feel like I see in the beer community brewers being more open about that. Like, hey, we kind of marketed this beer. We thought it was going to be good. We wanted to give you all a heads up. It didn't work out. I'm really sorry.
Or we're
going
gonna have to push the bottle release. 'Cause
And
it didn't,
there's going to be some
whatever it is. Yep.
percentage of people that are going to be like, oh man, I had made plans to drive there and buy it. But then there's going to be, I think, more and more people that are like, man, thank you for being, transparent about that, and for not trying to sell us a, subpar product.
Yeah, right. Well, and on that note, I know that you guys have a lot of stuff to get done. Small breweries mean a lot of work for everybody else that's involved. So
True.
I super appreciate you guys sitting
Yeah,
down,
thank you.
tasting some
Wow.
delicious beers, and giving me your time.
Thanks for
Yeah.
letting us be a part of it.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks so
Jess.
much, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You good?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Cut.
All right. Get going.
Yeah.
How we do?
Great. That was awesome.
Hey, we're here in Morganton, North Carolina. I'm sitting down with Todd Boera, Chief Brewmaster and co-owner of Fontaflora Brewery. I'm sitting here today looking forward to tasting and talking about Todd's unique take on beer. Todd, welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
Thank you. So you find yourself situated between Asheville, Charlotte. Asheville is basically starting to be the de facto brewing capital of craft beer for North Carolina.
Yep.
Charlotte is rapidly growing for the amount of breweries that are going on. And you're in Morganton.
Yeah, but according to a lot of different publications, we're a Charlotte brewery or we're an Asheville brewery. That's happened so many times. Morganton has been amazing and challenging as a place to call home because a lot of it is education is involved. Educating our consumers on A, what craft beer is, and then B, like what the hell we are making. In terms of craft beer,
Right.
So it's not what people would expect. When they come, when we have people that come in here and they're like, "What do you have that's closest to Bud Light?" or something like that. It's just like, we have a beer that has beets in it, and they're just like what? So, but that's kind of this really amazing challenge for me, like, Asheville's easy, right? You could open up a brewery in Asheville and all you have to do is make decent beer and you have a steady population base. There's no challenge there.
Right.
And again, no disrespect to the breweries in Asheville. There are some amazing ones and some really good friends of mine. But to me, it just doesn't take a lot of, you don't have a lot of work in front of you because you have a population, it's a steady population there, but then an influx of like millions of tourists a year going to Asheville. Nobody's coming to Morganton. Morganton's a town of, I think the spreading out, it's, 30,000 maybe. I think less than that, it's maybe 20. So, it's a very small community and we bring in a lot of tourists to this town, which is really, a lovely thing. Craft beer tourism is like the thing nowadays.
Wow.
But our local community supports the hell out of us, and it's it's really amazing. And to see them, embrace the styles of beers that we are making. So I wouldn't trade that for for the world.
Right. You came into this as a brewmaster or as a brew guy, right?
Yeah, certainly. The brewmaster thing is interesting. I sort of feel like karate is sort of the way it sounds when people say that. Like I don't feel like I'm 31 years old. I feel like I don't necessarily, I haven't mastered it yet. So like, I kind of just, I'm the brewer here, and I came into brewing, I would say the same way that just about everybody goes into brewing. I would find that if you ask just about anybody, home brewing is, the root of every single craft brewery in America. I would guess that.
Right. And then you spent a number of years in the craft, like working under other brewers, working for other breweries?
Yeah, so I started, after home brewing, for years and years. I've been brewing from, a little over 10 years now total, including like home brewing. I was able to talk my way into a job at the other brewery in Morganton, actually, Catawba Brewing Company. So that's sort of where I got my start with those guys. And, I knew that I wanted something different from what they had going on. Mm-hmm. So, the opportunity presented itself, oddly enough, to stay in the same town. But, I found my business partners here, local guys. And so we just decided to launch, what is now Fonta Flora.
Wow. So you guys, you launched Fonta Flora, and 9 months later, you're already being recognized for your product, for your craft.
And 9 months in, our first Great American Beer Festival happens annually out in Denver, Colorado. We decided to ship beers out for the competition. And, there are, thousands of beers, that are in the competition, lots of breweries. And so it's kind of a crapshoot. We knew we were making good beer, and we got a gold medal for this beer right here, and this big old stein. It's called Irish Table. It's our dry Irish stout, which is, now thinking back, just sort of comical because we are known for our, just sort of local agricultural, craft beers. Mm-hmm. And we win a gold medal for one of the most traditional beer styles, that we possibly could have entered. And my business partners like to joke that it's completely their gold medal because without their influence, I wouldn't have made a dry Irish stout, which is probably true.
Right. This beer was one of those moments of awakening for me because of the fact that you used a vegetable and it wasn't, not a tuber, not a gourd. Sure. You used a root vegetable, and you used one of my favorite root vegetables, and one that grows quite well in our soil here.
Absolutely.
And it was a wow moment because you managed to extract just the right amount of sweetness from it without it feeling cloy. It didn't taste like borscht. You managed to do all those great things without throwing the normal stuff at beets.
Sure.
Can you talk to me a little bit about this beer?
So Beets, Rhymes, and Life is named after a Tribe Called Quest album. And I've always had this, sort of, probably like you said as a chef, this love affair with beets, actually realizing that this is, a really delicious vegetable. And I was like, how can I incorporate this in beer? That's kind of always the quest, without seeming hokey for me. We knew from the get-go that this beer was not going to be loved by everyone. Mm-hmm. And, certainly people that don't like beets hate this beer. But people who love beets love this beer. And I'm one of those people. And, this has certainly become one of the beers that we're known for. And I was very thrilled to received the recognition for this beer because it is, I think it fits quite well in the portfolio that we really are trying to create as far as our, just our local, craft beer sort of portfolio, I guess.
Walk me. Do you have a particular creative process? I mean, or do you just? And I know it's a seasonal thing, but at the same time, it's like when you look at a beet, do you go, "This is my recollection of a beet as a child," or do you look at the beet and go, "I'm going to take this and that"?
Sure. So part of it is understanding also what it means to be something that's local, and then something that is, heritage. Something that actually has roots to this area in particular. And so we call a lot of our beer styles, Appalachian, followed by, we do Appalachian wild ales instead of American wild ales because they represent a place. And so that's mainly what we're trying to get at, is crafting beers that represent a place. We've adopted, a while ago, we've adopted this sort of motto of local culture, local agriculture, and that means a whole bunch, really, when you really start thinking about it. You have the culture aspect of, the way people in a place live, and their, and everything that sort of encompasses that. But then for brewing, it's also related. It's really interesting that culture represents, what I just said, but then also represents, that's what the microorganisms are called. They're like, tell me, what kind of cultures did you use in this beer? And so it's fascinating that there's that, just the two are so intertwined, and it's like the cultures that are fermenting our beers, and then also, so we have that aspect of it, and then the local agriculture, obviously from what are going into all of our products. So, it's a really important thing for us. That's how I approach these things. It's just very culinary driven, and it's like, cucumbers have, these certain flavors, and they pair well with, these certain ingredients, and it's just like, what happens. And so a lot of it is really born from cooking, from making I'll give you a perfect example. 2 years ago, we did a beer with fennel, and it was just straight fennel. It was a barrel-aged sour beer, Appalachian wild ale, and I wanted to switch it up this year. And so I didn't want it to just be fennel, because it's kind of overpowering for, especially putting it in beer. So I had all this fennel come in from local farmers working with, again, New Appalachia from up in Boone. And then I also had, in the same time frame, all these blackberries come in. I thought they were going to be for two different projects. I had no idea at the time that I wanted to blend them together for a beer. And so, but I took some of them home, and we made a fennel blackberry slaw. And as soon as I tried that, it was like, this is a beer. And so it's just kind of this aha moment of when you are working with these, again, fresh and local ingredients, and you just start throwing stuff together, is when you could really have one of those really incredible, beer ideas. Yeah. And so, culinary, just on its own, a fennel blackberry slaw was awesome.
Said, I'm nodding my head because I'm like, of course, they're in season together. They go well.
Yeah.
And so I get that part. And how did the beer?
Beer is awesome. It's an Appalachian wild ale. It was part of our last bottle release, so it has a really nice acidity to it, and really awesome fennel undertones. And the beer is pink from the blackberries, but it's not in your face of either. It's just faintly pink, and that they're blackberries. And then for some people who are sensitive to fennel, I've been hearing that it's overpowering, but I completely disagree. I think it's one of the most balanced beers that we've made, considering fennel, considering what it is,
Yeah, I mean, fennel is definitely there's no sort of on the fence with fennel.
Yeah.
I've not come across it. You either like fennel, love fennel,
sure,
or you don't. Is that one you're gonna be doing again?
That is certainly one we'll be doing again, and that's kind of an interesting thing too. We're just getting to the stage of existence of where repeat beers are a thing, especially big popular repeat beers.
Right.
Like Irish Table, we've been doing since day one, and it's easy to replicate batch after batch after batch. But some of these, the beers that we call Appalachian wild ales, they are alive and they change, and they're made with ingredients that change. Like, am I getting the exact same variety of blackberry? Am I getting the exact same variety of strawberry? That's what I was talking with, the farmer Amy from The Farmer's Daughter in Taylorsville, where I get the strawberries from. It was just like telling her, like, listen, this beer has, a cool following surrounding it. Like, this is a lot of pressure on me. I need to, like, make this beer as good as it was last year. And so I need these strawberries to sort of be similar, exactly the same, rather.
And is she giving you the, you do know how this works?
Right, exactly.
I mean, the guy who went to school for agriculture,
Sure.
you have no idea.
Yeah.
So since we are in the middle of North Carolina Craft Beer Month, what is your take? Where do you see craft beer going specifically, I would say, for North Carolina?
I'm damn proud to be a brewer and have a brewery in North Carolina right now. There was a time when that was looking like I was going to move, but especially Western North Carolina specifically, kept me here, and I couldn't be happier because it is part of this greater movement that's happening. I mean, California, tons of breweries. Colorado, tons of breweries. All these states that have had a very thriving craft beer community for a long time. And so North Carolina is awesome right now. And so I think we have some of the best breweries in the country in North Carolina, and they're just coming on even stronger.
Do you think it's because of our agriculture?
I think for the folks that are actually taking advantage of the agriculture that North Carolina, provides, absolutely.
It's become almost expectant that they're buying some ingredients locally,
I think unfortunately it's still not an expected thing with breweries when they open up, and I don't necessarily want that from every brewery. I mean, I do love to see that, but I'm fine with a brewery if it's not the angle that they want, as long as they're making some badass beers. Right. That's the most important thing. And so, yeah, I think there are a lot of breweries who are opening up, who are taking this angle, Haw River, obviously Free Range and Full Steam and Burial, the other folks that, that are part of this, but it's quality, man, is like number one. You can preach local all day. Right. If you're not making a good beer from local products, like, who cares? Right. So, you got to be making good beer. And so for me, I want to see, every year out at the Great American Beer Festival, when they're announcing all these awards, dominated by California and Colorado. Like, I'm sick of it. Like, I want to see North Carolina people, breweries up on that podium, up on that stage more than, Colorado and California breweries.
Do you think we're there yet, or if
we just don't have the population? We don't have the population of breweries that California and Colorado does. So it's not a fair, advantage, right? They have an unfair advantage to us. So, we're getting there as we keep on growing. We have, luckily, the beer laws in North Carolina are okay compared to the rest in the South. So it's helping North Carolina become a really, strong force in the craft beer, in the country. So, because of those things, there's going to be more and more breweries that keep on opening. And for me, everyone talks about saturation and, what does it mean for the market share and like all these things. I think that there's room for growth always if the quality is great. I mean, I think it just it keeps everybody else on their toes, and it keeps everybody else having to up their game and make, really good beer and have a really, have a good story to tell. And, what are your passions and what are the philosophies behind, your brand? And I think it all plays into it. And, I think it could be a brewery like Fonta Flora that is, this little, Flatiron building in a small community. Every small town in America could have, a Fonta Flora, could have a small, pub, brewery that, if you didn't have crazy aspirations of, growing to a 100-barrel brewery or, or whatever, like, you could exist just like this forever.
Right, well, I know you got a lot to do, being that you're the only one back there brewing beer,
which is currently in process right now.
Right, which smells amazing as well as all this. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy
Thank
day.
you guys, for sure.
And sharing not only beer, but your story.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Yeah, happy to tell the story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Order Fire. Today we're on location at Full Steam Brewery in Durham, North Carolina. Sitting here with Sean Lilly Wilson. He's the president, founder, and chief executive optimist for the brewery here. Looking forward to sitting down with Sean. I want to talk to him a little bit about his take on things here for North Carolina Craft Beer Month. Sean has an interesting backstory that I think is going to give us a different perspective than we're getting from our other brewery friends. So with no further ado, Sean, welcome to Full Steam.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
So you are here doing this not because you were like, you're not the typical beer you're not the typical brewery story that we've come across, which is the guy that was a home brewer, like started off in college and then worked your way through, maybe went through your first career and decided to follow your passion. You were never a home brewer, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And just because my story is different I don't at all undermine or want to sort of downplay that narrative that a lot of people have.
Yours is just different.
Mine's just way different. Yeah. So I come into it with a real passion and love for craft beer, as do most, right? At least you hope. And but my entry into it was in this lobbying campaign about 10 years ago, working on a restrictive alcohol limit, kind of a prohibition era law, like a blue law that North Carolina still had on the books. And one of the last great ones to stay on, and actually for 70 years, was that beer couldn't be above a certain percentage alcohol. At the time, 1935, it was 5%. In the 80s, it was nudged up to 6%. But basically, we worked on this lobbying campaign to remove that alcohol cap or lift it up to 15%, was what it ultimately ended up being. And that was a 2.5-year volunteer effort, and I just got started into it because I got my first taste of beer, and a friend of mine told me, yeah, well, I hope you enjoyed it because you won't be finding that beer on the store shelves anytime soon. And that blew me away, and it kind of started the process.
So prior to being a brewery owner, what were you doing?
A lot of other different things. I have a passion for entrepreneurship and the startup environment. I have an MBA and a Master of Public Policy from Duke. But I sort of sold myself short as the entrepreneur. I'm not an engineer. I'm not someone with a tech background. I didn't think of myself as an inventor. So for a long time, I worked for other startups that had that technology and was kind of a sales and marketing or business development person. And it wasn't until I realized that I could combine my love of beer and my passion for sort of the front of the house, because I have 10 years in the restaurant world, including 3 at Magnolia Grill in Durham. Yeah, that I realized that my idea is beer, my passion is people, and that's a very viable business right there. Or at least it should be. I'm still working on that part.
Right. I mean, you have a lot of beer available right now, which is impressive. And it's a large, and I'm saying large compared to some smaller breweries. It's not one of the big guys, right? It's not.
Yeah, we're like kind of the median-sized brewery, American brewery, at like 6,000 barrels. Kind of very
And wait,
average.
so you only have, how many barrels are you allowed to? Is there a cap on there?
Oh, that self-distribution thing?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
No, I don't want it too much. But, so you guys are on the other side of that one because
We're smaller than that, but with the way we're growing and the fact that we self-distribute, we will inevitably hit that cap if it remains the 25,000 barrel cap. Because it's not about the amount you self-distribute. So a brewery can only produce a certain amount of beer a year and still retain the rights to haul the beer around with its own employees, which our guys are currently out doing right now. If we were to grow beyond a certain level, 25,000 barrels, then we lose that right for forever. Now we're at 6,000, we're short, but as you know, there's a lot of other breweries that are in hyper-growth mode that are rapidly approaching that level. I mean, one of the reasons we're called Full Steam is that we're on this mission to make distinctly Southern beer, and we don't look over our shoulders worrying about what other people think of us, right? Or what we're doing. Sometimes that's a reminder to myself, to be honest, to be focused and to not worry and to not think about it too much. But it is a competitive market with a lot of collaboration, a lot of friends, a lot of peers. But I talk a lot with my staff about what I call being the nimble tortoise instead of the breathless hare. So our pace is very deliberate. We follow the kind of Allagash model where we don't want to grow more than 40% a year. That's one of Rob Todd's philosophies, and he's done extremely well at Allagash, playing the long game. I mean, I'm 45 years old. This is what I'm doing with my life, and I'm not in it to flip it. I'm not in it to grow too fast. I have no qualms with other brewery owners or brewers who wish to do that. For me and where I'm at, I want to be measured, deliberate, and hone in on this passion that we have to make distinctly Southern beer. That's a long game. It takes time to explain a carver to people, a sweet potato lager that doesn't have any pumpkin pie spice in it.
That was amazing, by the way. When the Carver came out, I want to say, and I didn't mean to cut you off,
No, you can cut me off anytime you're giving me compliments.
and when I can taste craft in something, when there's thought that goes behind it, there's a difference, there's a human quality to it.
And
I think-
intentionality.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I think really what a lot of it is driven by is one of our core values, under that value of quiet confidence. Now, it's not very quietly confident for me to talk about, and at the risk of bragging about our core values, but meta kind of language
Right.
aside, the quiet confidence really is a common thread to what we do. Now, there's times where we flex our muscles and we have a little bit more outlandish or a little bit more surprising beers, but I think in general what we're aiming for is beers that have that quiet confidence, that work with food instead of trying to compete against it, that enhance conversation instead of trying to be the center of conversation.
And when we talk about, when you say makes it distinctly Southern, what does that mean for Folstein?
It's our primary definition when we talk about breweries that are of the South and express the South. We want people to think of Full Steam. Our passion is what we call the Southern beer economy, where we work really hard to bring in local flavors and the farm and food traditions of the South into our beer, to have that local flavor, to have a sense of place of the South. Not because local is trendy, but because we have a true passion for crafting what we call a Southern beer economy. About 40% of our raw material ingredient purchases are within several hundred miles of Durham, North Carolina. 40%. That's a lot for a brewery.
And having been a farm to fork chef, having done that and try to work that, I know how the numbers translate.
Right.
The closer to home your product is, the higher your cost goes, the lower your profit margin can be.
The biggest contributor to that 40% is our purchase and support of Riverbend Malt. And the guys at Riverbend are unabashed about the fact that their grain, their malted barley, is going to be more expensive because there's a reason for it. There's a deliberateness to that premium that we hope our customers will understand and appreciate. When I talked about that Southern beer economy concept, the key word for all that in what my passion is economy. And the fact that you're talking to Free Range and Burial and Fonta Flora, and that there's other breweries that are doing this concept of making distinctly Southern beer and buying local ingredients, really is the definition of economy. If it was just us, it'd be a Southern beer business, and it would be a nice little novelty.
Yeah.
But if we can work together and support each other and share seed stock and share ideas and work with farmers who can dedicate acres of land to a particular new crop of corn or an heirloom grain, we're creating jobs, we're creating economic opportunity, we're creating biodiversity, and really supporting this Southern beer economy in this post-tobacco North Carolina. That's critical for me. So the fact that we have our brethren in this and kindred spirits in this world of Southern beer, I'm super excited about. And it's even better because they're making delicious stuff that inspires me. In general, our collaborations, we work some with breweries, especially if they're like-minded, but we find that we do a lot with chefs. And so or people sort of in this world that we've been talking about for the past few minutes. One thing that comes to mind that sort of captures it really nicely is this Lindera beer that we made. It was a malty brown ale made with Candy Roaster squash that came from the garden of Diane and Chuck Flint of Foggy Ridge Cider in Dougsburg, Virginia. They had extra candy roaster, this heirloom squash that grows about yay big or so. They brought down 120 pounds of it. They're like, just use this. If you can use it, use it.
Right.
You know, and of course we're going to use candy roaster squash. So Brian and crew made a malty brown ale with roasted candy roaster squash, like by literally taking the candy roaster, slicing it in half, putting it on our big double barrel smoker there, and grilling it up, caramelizing it, right? And then we added that along with foraged spice bush and local molasses to make this delicious, spicy, sweet, anti-pumpkin to come full circle, right? Squash beer that really truly expresses a sense of place. And was really magical about that beer, first the flavors just work really, really well. But we served it last week at the Charleston Wine and Food Festival at Poogan's Porch. We did a dinner there, and we had a little extra of that beer left over. I was loading up the car, and all of a sudden, there, right next door to Poogan's is Husk and Travis Milton, the chef, who of all things, he's the one who's the big seed saver, who provided the seeds that the Flints grew, like, you know, and harvested and brought to us, and we brewed a beer, and then we make this, you know, we bring this beer down to Charleston only to come full circle and have the guy whose seeds made it all possible there to drink one of the very last pints of that beer. And I mean, that's just fantastic.
That is.
I don't know if I captured it well, but it's like I got to hang out in a room with like Bill Murray, right, that weekend, and that was badass. But having Travis drink that beer was badass.
Well, that's like mind-boggling, right? Because it's fortuitous. And here you are with this beer that you saved specifically to bring to this dinner, and there's a guy that was the genesis of the whole
genesis
thing.
of it all.
Was that the word you were looking for?
Yes, thank you. Well, that beer was a big hit for us, and not only because it was a hit, but because both Brian, our head brewer, and I have this, like, it just feels so right, and it's like, yes, this is what we're doing. So we can't rely on necessarily the Flints bringing us another 120 pounds. So the cool thing is that I'm talking with Travis, and he's going to supply us North Carolina seeds and Georgia seeds from like the two different varietals of candy roaster, and we're going to grow our own this year. We need to keep that going. And what's cool about Candy Roaster and Paw Paw and Persimmons and the different things that we work with that make this area unique and preserve diversity in seed stock and in flavor and in food traditions is that not enough people know about these ingredients, right? They may know it from your restaurant background, they may know it from their grandparents, but we get to tell that story through beer, of all things beer, right? So this beer brewed with native persimmons, right? There have been plenty of people that I've met over the 5 years of doing a persimmon beer who are like, I never knew what a persimmon was.
Right.
And what really gets me going and just makes me super passionate about what we do is the people who say that, and then they tell me, but now I have 4 trees planted in my backyard.
It's crazy.
You know, I came from whereversville, USA,
right.
And I came to the South, fell in love with it. My first Southern experience was on in a rainy day in Taylor, Mississippi, outside of Oxford, in like the true South, as Faulkner said, and I just fell in love. It also helped that I was falling in love with a Mississippi woman who I ended up marrying.
This is a Waylon Jennings song?
Yeah, exactly. I found her in a shotgun shack in Taylor, Mississippi.
There's actually a song that does called "I Love Mississippi." Well, Mississippi Woman.
Yeah,
is the name of the song. When
well,
you say it, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy's writing a Waylon Jennings song.
But I mean, I came in it as an outsider who was trying to find that place, that sense of place, and I think the challenge in the South, and if I can say this, is certainly in Charlotte, is to, like, you know, how do you express the South in a burgeoning, rapidly growing city like that? And I actually think that's one of our challenges here in Durham, even though we have this history, this tobacco history and all that. as Durham grows and transforms, I want the new next wave of Durhamites to fall in love with the South, with what makes Durham unique. And we're, frankly, getting surrounded by Condoville, USA, and I worry a little bit that the South is losing its sense of place. If we can express the love for the South and the love of agriculture and farm and food traditions in beer, and get people to think and act and support, our farm industry, our agricultural history, then we're doing our job, and we get to do it in this environment, in a heavy and urban environment, and have some fun and drink some beer in the process. That's what gets me going.
All right, well, Sean, I can't. I can sit here all day and jaw with you. I've had absolute blast in this conversation. It's been not just fun, but it's been a very natural conversation. Like, I picked up a lot of stuff from you that I really didn't know. It just makes me like your product that much more.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for coming out today.
Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it.
Thank
Yeah.
you.